You're listening to the Hunt Suburbia podcast. I'm your host, Pat Guyette. Big bucks I've been dreaming often, every night till I'm in a coffin. Vermont woods to the burbs of Boston, I'm looking for a tree to get lost in. Crisp mornings, little dust in the snow. Quality time, just me and my bow. Fall evenings, I know just where to go for some quality times for me and my bow. It's just me and my bow. All right, today's guest is Brent Whitlock. He is a new hunter. This is his second year. Last year was his first time going out. He started listening to the podcast, got a lot of tips and pointers from it, and he and I were messaging last year, actually. We'll talk about it in the podcast a little bit, but didn't even know the difference between a rub and a scrape, and was looking for some advice on scouting and how to hone in on some bucks. And well, this year, he, in his second year, has already killed 2 bucks, 3 does. He's tagged out in Massachusetts, looking for more states now to extend his season. He truly is obsessed with hunting, and I found out that you either get obsessed with it or you don't, and it's fine either way. But if you get obsessed with it, you can become a good hunter really fast. So here he is, Brent Whitlock. All right, another episode of Hunt Suburbia podcast, and I got Brent Whitlock here. What's going on, Brent?
Nothing much. Excited to be on here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Brent is a unique case because you just started hunting 2 years ago. This is your second year?
This is my second year. Yeah, I tried out shotgun last year and wasn't successful, but this podcast definitely helped me this year.
Yeah, so Brent reached out, and he and I were talking back in February. You were asking for some advice on scouting, and I think you mixed up the classic mixed up scrapes and rubs, and I did that when I first started hunting too. Like, you think a scrape, it sounds like a buck scraping his horns on a tree would be called a scrape, right? But that's the rub, and
right.
So there you were in February, not knowing some of the basics of hunting. But what did you do? So Brent ended up, he's tagged out, and he's got one more tag, but he's killed 5 deer already this year in his second year ever hunting, which is incredible. I think it took me 10 years to kill 5 deer. I started hunting when I was 10 or something like that. By 20, I'd killed 5. You've done it now in your second year, which is awesome, but a lot of hard work goes into that. So why don't you tell us about your experience so far, I guess.
Yeah. So when I reached out to you, Pat, I sent you, I think, 2 pictures. I called them both a scrape, and it was a rub, and it wasn't even a rub. I think it was like insects just getting at a tree. So I had no idea. I was very, beginner hunter. But this podcast and just YouTube videos after YouTube videos helped me learn about scouting and just what I'm looking for. But my first year, I only went out because my coworker, my boss, and I'm lucky to have him as a boss because he let me hunt before work, as long as I was there before 8 a.m. So, he was like, just give it a shot. I was like, all right, I'll go out, because my grandfather's a big hunter, but he can't really go anymore. Yep. I'd go out there on a bucket in the middle of a little field in the woods, and I had a blue hat on. And I'm pretty sure, I would have to look it up again, but deer could see like 2 colors, like blue and yellow potentially.
Yeah, that's what people say.
Yeah, and I was sticking out like a sore thumb. So I would be sitting in the middle of the field, and then like clockwork, these doe would come in the morning, like peek their head out, look at me, like do one of those where it bobs its head, stomps, and then snort wheeze. And I was like, that is the most incredible thing I've ever seen, because it was the middle of, end of November, I guess, where shotgun season is, and you just see the smoke come out of its nose. And then from there, I was kind of hooked. So I think around February is when I reached out to you, and I was really trying to figure it out. Okay, like, where are these does coming and going? Yep. And I was convinced that there was no bucks. Right. I was always dreaming about getting a buck. And I think in the messages I said that, and I talked to my boss, and he's like, there's going to be bucks. If you're seeing that many does.
Does your boss hunt?
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I did a lot of scouting. I couldn't find any scrapes or rubs, but I went elsewhere and I was finding them. And it was a pretty cool learning experience to go from seeing it on YouTube and then hearing about it and finally piecing together the puzzle. So all the scouting and just listening to this podcast and just the videos helped me understand that. And then just filling in the gaps with informal conversations with, friends, people I reached out to on Boston Bow Hunter at the beginning. They really helped me narrow down where to hunt.
There's so much. That's the great thing is there's so much in different forums, and the hunters are just willing to, if you talk to any hunter, they want to talk. It's like CrossFit, the old CrossFit saying, how do you know someone? I don't even know what the saying is, but how do you know someone's a CrossFit? They'll tell you 20 times in the conversation. I mean, hunters are like that. You wanna talk about hunting. You want to spread the knowledge. I'm just going back to the message and the messages with you, and you said in February, I went a little nuts in the off season, got tree stands camo. I'll be doing mostly archery, but I had my pump shotgun camo from start to finish in the season, grunt call, blah blah blah. So you just dove right into it. What did you start doing for scouting? So talk us through. And Brent shot a nice mature buck. He didn't just shoot any buck. Like your first buck was a mature buck, right?
Yep, 9-pointer, dressed out 167.
Yeah, it was a beautiful, awesome first buck.
Yeah.
But what did you do to really start, and what clicked? Like, what did you do to start honing in on the bucks and finding a bucky area?
Yeah, so it honestly started off with...
Did you do any shed hunting?
I did shed hunting. Yeah. I spent
anything?
I found one. It was a little forky, but that was probably one of the happiest moments I had. In all seriousness, you hear like all these.
It's kind of like your first buck.
Oh, pretty much.
Yep.
I mean, you hear all these guys shed hunting, and I got into the craze, and I would put miles, boots on the ground, time every single day for probably 6 months until I moved to Boston. I was out in the woods. I was trying different areas, but I kind of had core areas. I didn't go too far from home. But I had a lot of leads from my grandfather and where he used to hunt.
Yep.
So, I knew there were going to be bucks in the area, and it was mostly just following tracks and just being the snow. When I reached out to you, it was in February. That helped a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, if I didn't have the snow and I'm looking at leaves, I wouldn't be able to figure it out back then.
I think that was one of the things I told you. Just find some tracks and follow them because you're going to learn a lot from the track.
Right. Yep. But just following those tracks, you could see, like, I didn't understand, like, I'm like, oh, they're scraping at something. And I was kind of looking at the snow, and they're scraping for acorns. I mean, it might be white oaks, it could be red oaks. And then I was finding out, like, I'm like, why is there, like, red stuff in the snow? It could be the acidity of those red oaks that they're trying to find.
Yep.
And I know, like, over by my house, they'll be scratching at the snow because there's a big red oak tree there, and it'll be the middle of winter. Almost every night I would spook them. So it was kind of just figuring out what's their food source. I know water's nearby.
Yep.
And then the key for me was just spending as much time as you can on the ground. So a lot of the areas I was kind of honing into were just power lines. You just walk the power lines, and you walk those edges, you'll find an exterior scrape.
Yeah.
Something I learned online. And then from there, I would walk a little in, and you find your interior scrapes.
And if you're doing it in the snow, then you can just backtrack a big track, right? And see where they're coming from, see where they're bedding.
Right.
Yeah.
A big thing for me was I wish I had GPS like Onyx or Hunt Stand, some kind of app at the time.
Yeah.
But I was just taking screenshots of Google images on my phone, and I would make albums because that was cheap. But if I could go back... So
you knew about Onyx, you just didn't want to pay for it?
Right, right. Yeah, at the time I was recently graduated college student that didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, if anybody wants to sign up for Onyx, they are a sponsor. Use code HS20 for 20% off. If it's your first time signing up, they'll give you 20% off. If you already have it, the code's not going to do anything. But yeah, use it, man. Because do you use it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely pivotal. Even if you're if you're e-scouting, like that's big now. A hunt I have coming up starting tomorrow is the Blue Hills. I don't know a single thing. I haven't even set foot there, but I have an idea of where I want to go tomorrow, just based off wind direction and kind of. You could just look, and if you zoom in, you can see where they're walking. That's deer travel.
There are some times where you can zoom in and you can see paths. Well, I've done it through swamps or through cattails and stuff like that. Yeah, you can see, and it almost looks like you're like, wait, that looks man-made. Some of them look man-made. Maybe some of them are, but you can tell some definitely some paths through swamps.
Right.
Yeah, and see where they're all converging. So I did that this summer and put a camera right where they were all converging, and sure enough, it was a big entry exit to a swamp. So
Yeah. But
So you're gonna hunt the edge of a swamp in Blue Hills,
basically, I mean, that's
and
just
it's a
the
doe
easiest
only,
thing.
right?
Doe
Because
only.
you got
Yeah.
you already got your 2 bucks.
Yeah, the way it works is like you could buy doe tags for Blue Hills, but you still have your $2 tags just for Massachusetts. So if you
Yeah.
filled them already, you can't buy a buck tag
Right,
there.
right.
So I'm basically just going for does.
Yeah. That should be fun. You'll probably see some bucks and have to pass them, but
I don't know.
pull out the phone and get some footage.
That's brutal.
I lived in Quincy for 2 years before I moved out here, so Blue Hills was right across the street from the apartment complex that I was in.
Yep.
And that was even before I got serious into bow hunting. I had my bow there, but and I should have been putting in for that lottery there, because just could have walked right across the street and there's some really nice bucks in there. But
Yeah.
I wasn't. I was driving an hour and a half from there to go hunting, because I was still back in the phase where I thought you had to be in big woods to have good hunting. I didn't really understand that there's deer in small patches of suburban woods, because it might be 30-40 acre patch, but there's a string of 30-40 acre patches that goes all the way from New Hampshire down to Rhode Island and through Massachusetts, right?
Yep.
There's strings of them, and you add all those up together, and it's tens and twenties of thousands of acres. Those deer don't really look at the roads as borders, so it's pretty good, because in the suburbs, they feel safe. There's not a lot of people that can hunt them. There's some areas where they can't be hunted, and it's just kind of cool. So when I was living in Quincy, I should have been doing that Blue Hills, but I was going to Big Woods. I was driving an hour and a half to Big Woods.
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing a similar commute because there's not really many places you could hunt around Boston, so I'm commuting back home to Central Mass.
Yeah.
But I was actually lucky that one of my buddies that I work with, he had mentioned to just sign up for this permit. Maybe I'll get it. It's like a lottery, and I happen to get it. It's just unfortunate that I filled both my buck tags.
You did that before you knew what season you were gonna have.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk to people like you're a new hunter, they just basically say, just get the first one over with, And I don't know if I told you this too, and I'm glad I listened to Following the Blood Trail podcast.
Yeah.
I shot at 3 bucks before I even got my first one.
Yeah. So let's go through that whole thing, and I want to talk. And your first one was that big 9, right? Or was it a smaller
That
one?
was the second one.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's go through what your season this year, and you're still deerless. It's your first year, really, after scouting a lot. Tell us about how'd you miss those 3, because last year I missed, I think, 2 or 3 bucks before I got my 9-pointer as well.
Yeah. So I started off the season, picked the wrong stand because the one I should have went to had the Big 10 on it.
Yep.
And I'm looking to get them next year, so that was heartbreaking when I checked the camera. And I have 8
Big
mans.
10s can be Big 12s next year.
Well, let's hope.
This was great.
He might downsize to a Big 8. But
Good.
I do like the 8-mans, by the way. That's what I use for cameras, just cheap cameras.
Yep.
I do kind of want to get,
Did you get that from the podcast too?
I did.
Yeah, I started using them. I can't find them anymore. I think they're those Chinese brands on Amazon.
Yeah,
They-
like Victone or they're all the same.
Well, yeah, I think it's the same company that makes them. And I heard that they'll manufacture it for 2 years. They'll put like a lifetime warranty on it in like typical Chinese fashion, and then they'll go out of business on purpose so that if anything fails, they don't have to do the warranty, and they just start a new business with a new name, but manufacturing in the same plant. But they are really good freaking cameras, from what I've understood.
I mean, the footage on mine is incredible. They do both pictures and they do videos. But I'm pretty sure that, like you said, if you look them up on Amazon, because that's where I bought mine, I'm like...
They're not there anymore. 8-man isn't.
But it's the same camera. They're like HC 200.
Yeah, it looks pretty much the same.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's called Victone now, or it might be a different
There's
brand.
a few of them now. I'm using the Midas ones, MEIDASE, and they're all pretty similar,
Yeah, is that the one where...
$75 and super, super high quality.
I watched a recent video you had. It had like a little blue emblem at the bottom left.
Yeah, there's like a
the
little
footage
blue.
was good.
Oh, it's amazing.
I was going to ask you about that too.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm trying to decide, and this is something we go over too, is what's worth the money, especially as a new hunter.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of money, and the text that you read that I sent to you where I was like buying camo, buying all these gadgets,
Yep.
Is it really needed? Especially with camo, I almost went over the top, and I got someone help me calm down by not buying expensive stuff.
Not
right
buying all the
first.
Sitka stuff right away.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's definitely not needed. I mean, if it
It's
gives
nice.
you peace of mind, and it does help a little bit. But I killed both of those deer with green and black checkered last year.
Yeah.
And blue gloves. I had blue gloves on, and I don't even know what I was wearing for a hat. It doesn't. I mean, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't, and you don't want. I guess you don't want to get caught out in a time where it does matter and not have it, because if it's your Big Ten and you blow it because of he just happens to look up and see you sticking out like a sore thumb as opposed to being in camo. But who knows, man? But it doesn't matter to the point where you. It's not to say you can't kill bucks and can't kill big bucks in jeans and a work outfit.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely certain things where you should, I think the terms like buy once, cry once.
Yeah.
Like that's how I was with my bow. I'm so happy that I went to Reedy's and I got a Matthews bow.
As you get older, you'll do that a lot. It's better to buy something expensive that'll last a lifetime as opposed to just keep
But I also
buying
bushwhack
cheap stuff.
too. So, my camo is going to get ripped.
Yep.
The scent blocker that I wear keeps me warm. I haven't had an issue with it. So, there's a lot of sales and stuff that you could take advantage of. And I got mine like 50% off.
Yep.
So it's just like I had a tendency to want to buy expensive stuff just because I wanted to, fit the role as a hunter. But you can get it done wearing, like you just said, like checkered shirt,
Yeah.
jeans if you really wanted to. It's just whatever you want to make of it. And that's kind of like another podcast we were talking about is, someone would go out into the woods and they didn't really believe in no scent. They would just wear whatever they're wearing that day. And I thought that was interesting because I am a big believer in no scent, putting things in totes. But there's some times where I get lazy and I might slip. Like I didn't put no scent on my boots when I walk in, or I didn't like spray myself, or, sweating like crazy the past 2 times.
Yeah, you had left some BO in there and you didn't wash it or whatever.
Yeah. And it didn't really affect the hunt because I was still seeing them come in. They didn't wind me. As long as you're playing the wind right, you're fine.
All right, folks, get on to www.heronhill.com and stock up on some wine, both for yourselves and, of course, for your wives and your girlfriends. Get them a case of wine and butter them up a little bit before deer season. Give them something to drink at night while they're waiting for you to get down off your stand. You got deer all around you, and you're up there in the dark waiting for them to go away so you can get down from your stand. They got to be enjoying some wine during that time. So stack up, get yourself a case. Go to www.heronhill.com. They'll deliver it right to your door. Make sure you use code HS5 for Hunt Suburbia 5. So code HS5 for an additional 5% off all the volume discounts they already got on there. If you get 6 bottles, you get a volume discount. You get 12 bottles, you get a bigger discount. And then you can add on HS5 for an additional 5% off. These guys have been a great supporter of the podcast. Please support them. Get whatever kind of wines you like, but I like the Eclipse Red. They've got a Game Bird Red that goes really good with game birds and pairs well with venison. It's got a little bit of a fruity taste to it. Go on there, get whatever you like. If you've ordered from them before with code HS5, just go on there and use the volume discounts they already got. It's already an incredible deal, and I'll get credited for the order as long as you use HS5 at least once before. So again, thank you everybody for your support. Tell your wives thank you for letting you get up into the stand a little bit extra this year. All right, if you folks are looking for a muzzleloader, you can't go wrong with a Woodman Arms muzzleloader. They're made locally right up here in New Hampshire. They are accurate, dependable, the most accurate and dependable muzzleloader on the market. People from all over the world are buying this gun. It's extremely light. It carries great. You don't have to clean it if you use Blackhorn 209 powder. And it just keeps shooting and cutting holes in the paper like you wouldn't believe. I've went around and shot a couple friends' muzzleloaders. They're Woodmans, and they are plunking them right in there, as Lanny Benoit says. And I haven't received mine yet, but I can't wait to. I'm sure they all shoot exactly the same because the owner there, Mark Woodman, is a machinist and an inventor. And, I mean, he has crafted this thing to shoot with precision. Get on to www.woodmanarms.com, check them out, or give Timmy Bolduck a call, 603-608-7218. He knows everything there is to know about those guns and will be happy to take your call and answer it. I think the wind's the most important thing for sure. And there's also a point where, like, if you get super, if you're super anal about your scent and controlling it and everything, where it can go overboard. It can work you a little bit too hard, where you think you're overthinking it too much, and then
you might not hunt a stand.
Yeah, and you're getting too much. You're stressing yourself out too much, and all of that plays a role into it too. Where then it's just like I did the same thing this year. I had some scent-free totes, and put baking soda in there, wash the inside and outside with baking soda. Change the baking soda out every month. You put a whole box and open it in there, and it's supposed to suck in all the scent and moisture and all that stuff.
Okay.
And I've done that, but still, like, there's one of the totes right there. But I come back and wear it in here, and it's, you're not going to beat the wind. Just play the wind the right way. There's definitely a few times this year too where I went in super sweaty. Had a shit time walking in, breaking every branch and super sweaty, and then
you
but the
start
wind's
giving
right,
up,
and you're seeing tons of deer. I'm seeing $4 or $5 almost every sit this year. It's,
nice.
I'm in some buck zones.
Yeah, I've been having some good luck too with I have a big doe herd, and it's helping me out, especially during the rut. Those bucks were coming out. I had issues with, I couldn't, every single time I look at my camera, it was nocturnal bucks, and you just have to figure out where they're going during the day. You don't just give up. So I kind of got lucky, and there was a day where I was in the stand, and I looked at the camera when I came down. I'm like, oh, this guy keeps coming at midnight, 1 a.m. What am I going to do? So I start walking around trying to find its bed. I'm looking in the thick stuff. I have an idea, and then about like 500 yards away, there's houses. So I'm like, maybe he's up close to the houses, kind of walking through there. And you can see they travel everywhere. But I knew on the other side of the tracks, there's rubs and there's scrapes. But I didn't have a camera there. One of my cameras got stolen. So I was like, well, I'm going to go in the dark, and I'm going to, see what's over there. And I just happened to get lucky that there was a doe that popped up. I'm like, oh, okay. And I look about 30 yards behind it, and there's the big 9-pointer that I ended up shooting.
This is in the dark?
No. This was like an afternoon. So I came down like in the morning, checked the camera, and then I went there in the afternoon just guessing where he might be. So.
And this was during the season. Was that the actual hunt where you killed him?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, let's go back though and talk about those first 3, because you missed $3. And
yes,
we're already like only we're still mid-season here, so you've already shot at $5 and killed 2 of them, right? This year. So you've definitely learned to hone in on the right spots. But I want to talk about what your setups were like and what maybe went wrong in those deer, and talk about how big they were and all that.
Right. So the first one, I forget when it was. It might have been they're all like late October, because bow season started the 18th in zone 9.
Yep.
So I had a natural scrape. My mock sent all my mock scrapes, just the leaves went on it, and that was it. I spent a lot of time and money on, all these natural scents. I'm putting down bachelor group, buck urine. I'm trying all this different stuff with the licking branch.
Yep. And none of your mocks worked, huh?
No, it didn't work for me. And I was putting them in areas where I knew there was buck travel. Sometimes I would put it up about 10 yards away from the other one, and they didn't stick. So there was a natural scrape, and it was a community scrape. All my cameras were on community scrapes. I found that's obviously the best bet.
Yep.
And they were like the size of rugs. So I'm like, this is great.
Can't miss it.
Yes, and another thing I want to mention too is people might not think that those community scrapes they are hit all year round.
Yep.
I had it on the camera on the natural scrape from February, and it's still getting hit today.
Yep.
And there'll be $4 or $5 coming, and they come in in waves. Depends on the type of year.
Yeah, and it's not like they're going in there and actually scraping up the ground all the time. Sometimes they will, but they're peeing in it and they're hitting that licking branch.
Yeah, they go nuts on that licking branch. Yeah. But anyway, the first buck, he came in, he hit the scrape, and it was a 20-yard shot, and it was probably this is during daylight savings time, so I think it was 7:30. So it was probably about 8 o'clock or 7:45. It was, bright enough to definitely shoot. And it was a 20-yard shot. I take the shot, and I didn't even look through my peep or the sight. Complete buck fever. Everything I was trained to do, I would say I'm a pretty good archer. I spent the entire off season shooting every single day, and you just lose everything. Everything that
Was he a big buck? How big was he?
It was a 6-point.
Yep.
For a first deer, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So
do you remember what you did though?
I didn't do anything what I'm used to like doing in terms of like routine, setup. So number one, I've always shot standing. I was sitting down for the shot. Number two, I pointed directly at him instead of bending at the hips.
Yeah.
So your string angle is totally different. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So sailed over the back of him. He ran about 5 yards, turned around, and then I had a perfect broadside shot at like 23 yards. And I was like, wow, I got a second shot. Shot again, but I didn't see the small twig right in front of him. I deflected off of it.
Yep.
And I speculate that it hit probably his shoulder because it went in about, I want to say like 5 inches. And then when he ran, snapped my arrow. And then I knew the direction he was traveling to, and I watched him. And I think this is actually a day or two probably after the Blood Trail podcast, and I had listened to it. So I was trying to pay as much attention as I could to the point where I couldn't see him. So I gave him probably about an hour, not long enough. I went down there. I couldn't see my arrow because it was in him, and then I could see that the shaft and it had blood on it. So it's probably 8 o'clock, like I was sitting around there, and I had to start work. So I tracked him as much as I could, and then there wasn't a lot of blood. So at the end of the day, I ended up getting one of my coworkers to come help me. We did a grid search from last blood, and we couldn't find him. Second deer, hit the same scrape. This is the same location. It came right underneath my stand, and I did the same thing where I pointed right at it instead of banging the hips, and I was sitting down. And then...
So you still didn't stand up?
Still didn't stand up because he was so close.
Yeah,
I was on
you
a
felt
creaky,
like you were gonna, yep.
creaky stand. And
creaky stand syndrome, man, the worst.
Oh, it's terrible, especially when they're right in front of you.
Yeah.
So he's coming from left to right. I wait until he gets slightly past me where I have a broadside quartering away shot, and I was aiming for the opposite leg, but didn't happen as I thought. I looked at the arrow; it was clear with a little blood on it, so it was pretty clear as day. It's a gut shot. Not a good shot.
How big was this buck?
This one was a small 6.
Yeah.
So I gave it actually 2 hours before I came down from the stand. I looked at the arrow, and when it ran away, it didn't really go far, and it was limping. So I'm like, all right, hopefully I'll get this one. So I start following it.
What do you mean it didn't go far?
It ran probably about 20 yards to where I could see it, and it was severely limping.
Yeah.
Like the back leg.
So
the
it
back
didn't,
leg
it didn't run too far. It ran and then started like limping away.
Limping away. So
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to give it, 2 hours, and then I was going to start tracking. But when you get a gut shot, you should wait 6 hours. So I went down, checked the arrow, saw it was clear. What I should have did was go back, change, eat, maybe even work, and then come back out in the afternoon and go check them out.
Yeah.
But instead of that intuition, maybe I probably didn't think about it. I just wanted to go check them out. I followed the blood trail. It brought me to a pool of blood right around the corner from where I last saw him.
I'm like, where he bedded down and you
where he
kicked
bedded
him out.
down.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, he's got to be around here somewhere. I didn't think of the possibility that he would get up and start walking again. So I couldn't find any more blood after that. And I started kind of looking around the area. I'm like, where could he go? And I look at the blood again, and he backed out and he went further down the hill. And then this just kept happening where I was following the blood. And it was tough to see because I knew I hit him and there was a lot of blood. Like in that where he bedded down, there was a lot of blood. So I'm like, he's got to bleed out eventually. So I'm following it.
Well, and a gut shot deer, if you didn't know, is a dead deer no matter what. You can't live with a hole in your gut. So that deer would have died, if you give him long enough.
Yep. So
and he's definitely dead now. No matter if you didn't find him, he's dead.
I know, that was the terrible part.
Yeah.
So I just keep following it, and I keep finding pools of blood, and I mean, I didn't think about this, but I just kept continuing to push it.
Yep.
So it got to the point where I was like crawling under some really, really thick stuff, following the blood. And it kept going forward, backing out, going elsewhere, backing out. And I was able to keep following the blood, but it just kept going thick stuff. And I was actually crawling through all the prickers and jumping over. Like, it was ridiculous, the stuff I was going through. But then I ended up, backing out, called one of my coworkers. Should have backed out earlier. And then we started grid searching again. And I kept finding blood, but at last blood I couldn't find them. So we ended up covering so much area and still couldn't find them. So that was a lost spot.
You didn't go back the next day and look?
I searched from like 7 a.m. to I think it was literally dark. So
yeah,
7 p.m.
How many days after the first bug was that? Just a few days after?
A few days after, yeah.
So you had to have been at this point feeling pretty bad, pretty dejected, right?
Right, yeah. It was almost to the point where I didn't even want to shoot.
Yeah.
It makes you sick to your stomach.
Yeah. But this is okay. This is the kind of stuff that you learned so much already out of those first 2 deer, and I can tell that you're a good hunter already, and you've learned so much in this 1 year alone. You got to make those kinds of mistakes because you're going to learn from them. So
yeah.
You already went through it twice, and then so what was the third one?
Third one was just a clean deflection. I was like, well, if I missed, at least I didn't hit it. It made me feel a lot
Same
better.
spot?
No, different place. Yeah.
And so what was that? Was that another little buck, or was he a big buck?
That was a little buck because it would have been my first one.
Yeah.
And I just ended up hitting a branch that I didn't see. It was like it was getting close to last light, and you're looking through the little peep and you're trying to look past the shot.
It's real hard at last light. I've been actually like leaving 10 or 15 minutes before like last legal now because I just haven't been able. There's no way I could get a nice ethical shot off. In those last 15, I wear contacts and stuff. My night vision isn't that great.
Yeah. Well, speaking of last light, I had a crazy experience the other night. So, I had like does all around me.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to blow the spot. The snort wheeze. I didn't want anything in the area to know that I was there. So it was like 4:30, sunset. I have does around me. I'm like, all right, I'll wait until they clear before I come down. They kept they're eyeing me. They're trying to figure out what I was,
Yeah.
4:30 rolls around. Now it's 5 o'clock. It's 5:10. This is the night where there was the rainstorm and the lightning and everything.
Oh, that was just last night, wasn't it?
It was either last night or 2 nights ago. I can't remember.
I can't remember either. I think
I
it
go
was
hunting
last
twice
night too,
a day now.
I
So.
came out early. I was like, you know what?
Yeah, I should have not been there. But I was, I was trying to get rid of these does without them figuring out what it was. But they were so curious of me. It was kind of like watching your video where they wouldn't leave you alone.
Yeah.
It got to the point where it was just like lightning like crazy. And
oh, dude, yeah, you got to get out.
Yeah, I'm in the aluminum tree
You're already
stand.
tagged out on bucks too, and those does aren't going to remember next year, hopefully.
I was in Rhode Island at this point.
All right, yeah.
So then I started.
Oh, so you're buck hunting again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm laying down my bow, and that's what ended up spooking them. But I got to the bottom and I flashed my light, and all I see were just coyotes. And I'm like, oh well, this is great. On top of the lightning, now there's coyotes too.
I was gonna say if you're surrounded by deer, because this happened to Scotland and I the other night too. We got down out of our stands, and he was packing up all of his saddle stuff, and deer just started coming down off the hill, and you could tell they were bucks. They were making scrapes and stuff around us, and we couldn't really see. You could just see dark shadows, and they were 15, 20 yards away, like making scrapes and stuff. And I was just like, dude, be quiet, because this is in where my big target 9 is. Yeah, and I don't want him to like be educated. Right. But we ended up just educating him anyway. We had to get out of there. My dad was waiting for us and stuff. But Scotland mentioned, and I've heard this on other podcasts and stuff, that you just start acting like a coyote, or start barking, start howling a little bit, and then they might think, oh wait, that was a coyote, not a human in there. If you really want to get out of there quickly, make some noises of other animals and kind of spook them out.
Yeah, that's something. As long as the wind's in your advantage, if it's blowing at them, they're gonna know that it's human.
Right, right. Yeah. Carry a coyote leg with you for those scenarios if you want.
Yeah.
A vacuum seal bag or something.
Yeah, I know like coyotes don't typically like go after humans, but like in those scenarios, it's like when you're a bow hunter, you really don't have any line of defense. And it can be pretty scary because it's happened to me several times this year.
Just have a nice knife on you. You can kill coyotes easy with a knife. If it ever did happen, if they jumped on you, just start stabbing them. They're not gonna. There's no way they can take you down. They're only 25 pounds.
I saw a big one the other day. I was sitting up there. This is before I got my big 9. I think I was either grunting or I had a bleat call, and I had a big coyote. Like, I thought it was a German Shepherd.
Yeah.
It came screaming. Well, at first I thought it was a buck, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It came flying in at me, and then it was a dog, and I was like, oh, what? And then
there are some big ones.
Yeah, they're very smart animals. So it got to about 40 yards, and I couldn't shoot at it anyway. There was too many trees in the way, and then it turned around.
It's a good size one. He almost looks like a.
That's what it looked like, actually.
Yeah, it looks like a border collie or something.
Yeah. Wow.
It kind of looks like a domestic dog, but.
Yeah, some of my cameras are just loaded with coyotes, and it's pretty concerning.
Yeah, I just put out a new video tonight from November 4th or something, where I saw 5 bucks in that stand, including my big target. And on the way out, I found a deadhead, my first deadhead.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was like a nice 7-pointer. He was a young 7-pointer I had been watching all summer. Year and a half, 7, which is amazing for a year and a half old buck. Most of them are forkies or
right
spikes and forkies, 6s. He was a nice 7. He was going to be a nice buck, but I found him dead, just his head, and I was just wondering what killed him, because I had him on camera as late as like October 10th or something, and here it is November 4th, and it's just his head. So it could have been a hunter killed him, but I haven't seen any other hunters in that area. I'm in some deep woods, and I hadn't seen any hunters in there. Nobody on my camera going by or anything. So I don't think it was a hunter that killed him and just couldn't find him, and then the coyotes ate him. And he's not mature. He's only a year and a half, so it could be coyotes. And on that camera where he was, there was a pack of 4 coyotes roaming together going through there. And coyotes can pack up, but a lot of times you see them in 1 or 2. But this is a nice healthy pack of 4 going through there. And I was thinking maybe they did take him down.
Yeah. They definitely, we've all seen videos of them with like a baby fawn in their mouth, but yeah. I wasn't sure if they would take down a big buck. But
well, they might try. They're not successful on doing it, especially with a mature buck, but a yearling, maybe. But, a healthy yearling can outrun a bunch of foxes. A bunch of coyotes. I don't know. I go back and forth on what coyotes can and can't take down, but they're opportunistic. They're going to try.
Yeah, and there was one time I was walking out of the woods recently. I was walking out and I hear, obviously the loud thunder of just like the deer running away.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's clear as day, deer. But right next to the deer there was something different. It was like kind of prancing through. It was different noise. I turned my headlamp on. It was coming towards me. I turned my headlamp on. It was a coyote right in front of me.
Yeah,
and like. It's so eerie because when you turn on your headlamp, it's just these eyes looking at you. And I'm like, oh, my God.
Yep.
Can't get away from them.
Yeah, you'll start to learn the different sounds of stuff, too, because the coyotes when they're trotting like that after something, they sound a lot different than a deer. But I definitely am guilty of thinking a deer was coming and having it be a coyote sometimes. If they're just kind of walking through, they sound like a deer. But when they have that trot, it sounds just like a dog. The other night I was checking cameras, and I think it was a Sunday. I went in to check a cam, and but it was like I still like to check cams close to dark, just because I like to check them while I'm there. I don't bring the card back. I bring my phone, a little reader, and
same.
I check it there, and I sit down on a rock and go through the videos. And if it's like even if it's a Sunday, go down at dusk or dawn, either in the morning or at night, and you're kind of like you're getting to sit there too, a little observation sit. And so I'm sitting there checking the cam. And there's 2 bucks on the hill in front of me. Just start coming in about 15 minutes before, it was right around sunset, about a half hour before it got too dark. They're on this hill. I should have brought my binoculars. Usually I do, so I can still watch. I couldn't tell how big they were, but they were bucks. And I'm watching them, and then all of a sudden I hear from my right, and I was like, oh, another one. But then I hear it's a and I was like, oh, it's going to be a coyote. Coyote was just weaving in, coming right by me. It just reminded me of what you were talking about. And he wasn't smelling those bucks. Those bucks didn't even pay him any attention. I could see them up on the hill, and he was just down cruising the coyote looking for something.
Yeah, checking the cameras. I only check the cameras when I go to that stand.
Yep.
I try to stay out as much as I can,
Me too.
and I'll try to
This
get in and
particular
out.
one you can't hunt. I have it in State Park, and you can't hunt, but I like to see what's there.
Oh, okay.
I have those same deer. They travel all over the place to all these huntable places, so it's just getting a little inventory and. Yeah, so I check that one a lot because I don't care. I don't care if I bugger that place up because it's just going to push into places where I can hunt.
Yeah, maybe we talk about a little bit, just like camera location.
Yeah, let's do that, and we'll tell your big buck story too. But we can do that. We'll do that later.
Sure.
Yeah. So, what have you learned about the cam locations?
So, I pretty much put all my camera locations on community scrapes. I don't really put them so much on travel corridors, pinch points. It's always on, like, it's even better if that community scrape or whatever scrape I'm putting a camera on is kind of in that funneling area, going from either bedding to food.
Well, that's where they are anyway. Community scrapes are always in that funnel area. It's in a place where multiple funnels will come together.
Right.
That's why it's just naturally. It's like if you were gonna start a bar or restaurant, you put it at the intersection of a couple of main streets, right? Because it's the best place for it, and that's what these community scrapes are for all the deer. It's the most commonly used area and where they can lay down their scent and communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes it can be difficult because you see what bucks are there. It's just typically it's always hit at night.
Yeah.
During the summer, of course, it's always daylight hours, and it's like, oh well, I can't touch you until October 18th or whatever day it is, and then they just go ghosts. But a lot of guys will talk about the October lull, and I didn't necessarily see that. The bucks were still there. They didn't really vanish, and they were still active.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was a little curious too.
I've always had good luck seeing deer in October. I don't know what that's all about. I mean, you can read up on why it slows down a little bit, and they probably don't leave their bedding and go as far, but as long as you're close to bedding, you see a lot of activity. I just checked my best community scrape camera yesterday. It was yesterday because when the lightning went through, because I went out there to check this community scrape, which I hadn't checked since October 7th. So I'd been out there for more than a month, and I wanted to see what was going through there. And that was near where I killed the 8-pointer. I just hadn't been in there since I recovered that buck. And checked it and, got up into my climber and climbed up. And I'm checking. It had like 300 videos. So I had just climbed up everything. My bow was still on the ground. I screwed in my bow hanger.
Yep.
And I hear some stuff behind me. I turn, and there's a buck before I could even get my bow off the ground. And I was like, Jesus, man, what my luck. And
Did they know you were there?
No. He looked like a pretty good one. He ended up coming in. He was just a young 6-pointer, but when I just saw a flash when I turned around, he was kind of just walking through some thick stuff. And I was like, holy crap. So I just pulled up my bow fast, but he turned and looked at me as I was pulling it, so I just let it hang while he looked. And then as soon as he turned the other way, I pulled it up real fast. So I was paying attention to him right as you're pulling it up, because if he sees, that bow just going through, you could spook him. All right, you guys have probably heard me talk about Onyx in the past. I use Onyx religiously, whether I'm hunting in the big woods or I'm hunting in the suburbs. It's great. I drop waypoints in there where all my cameras are. I can preset some stand locations and, put in, this is a good stand location for a southwest wind, or this is a good stand location for an east wind. You can put in the icons to have different colors, so you can color code stuff, which I find super helpful. If I have a spot that I still need to get a camera out, I'll put the shade of my camera icon in there to white, so I know that I got to go and put a camera up in that location. Once it's there, I turn the shade to blue, so I know it's an active camera. I use it a lot. Property boundaries is great. You've got a line distance on there, so you can tell how far away you are from different structures like roads. So you make sure if you're in the suburbs, you're hunting in a legal spot. And then in the big woods, I mean, it's a security blanket for you. It is a GPS. It's a much better GPS than those little handheld things you got to put in your pocket. So you can download maps before you go out into a spot that might not have cell service. So you make sure you always have the map on your phone, whether you've got the cell service or not. It really is just an invaluable tool. And if you guys want to sign up for the first time, we've got a special code. Use code HS20 for Hunt Suburbia 20, and you guys will get 20% off OnX Maps. So go to www.onxmaps.com and use code HS20, and you'll get 20% off your membership. You will not be disappointed. It has helped me kill deer over the last few years since I've been using it. I'm addicted, and it is just another tool in the toolbox, but a necessary one. So get on to onxmaps.com, use code HS20.
It amazes you how you could just sit still and they're staring at you.
Yep.
If you just don't do anything, you could stare right at it and just don't move. They'll just wag their tail and then they'll keep moving.
Yep. I mean, I was talking about it with Chris Alberini a couple nights ago. For some reason, 7 minutes has been the number for me. It's happened to me multiple times with a buck where they've been there for 7 minutes, but I've been able to stay still. And I know it was 7 because I was filming one, and then the other one, he was standing right in front of a cell cam while I was there, and he had me. I missed him. I missed a shot under his belly. That's that one on the right. I missed a shot under his belly. He jumped back. He looked at me, knew something was up, but there was a hot doe on the other side of me. I was right in between them, so he wasn't going to leave her. But he just stood there as I was on a knee, and I was like, man, I was arrowless because I had just shot it. I mean, I had a quiver.
Oh, wow.
And he was staring at me. And after 3 minutes of not moving and being on my knee, I was like, I got to get another arrow in. So I very slowly, sloth-like, moved that arrow like this. You know, not looking at him in the eye either, looking at his ass. Mm-hmm. Very slowly put it in there. He let me. He still stayed there for another 4 minutes because my cell cam, I went back and looked at it. And then after 4 minutes, he let his guard down and just started walking the way he was going again. Stopped, turned around. I was able to make a kill shot on him. But then another one 2 years ago, had a buck stand. I was filming that one. He came in. I rattled. He was looking for where the rattling was coming from. You know, those bucks. I did a lot of rattling this year, and even in the last week or so. But I'm really getting turned off to it. I don't think I'm going to do it as much because the mature bucks do come in. Mm-hmm. They go and they're looking. If there was a deer, if you could use decoys in Massachusetts, it would be killer. But they come in looking for deer, and you can't, and they don't see it, and so they're freaking smart enough. They don't come in all the way. They know exactly where that sound came from.
Oh yeah.
And they come into 40 to 50 yards, but they stay behind thick shit as they do it, and that's what this buck did. And he stood there for 7 minutes exactly, and then let his guard down. I saw him lick his back, turn his neck, and lick his back. But they always walk out the same way. Once they let their guard down, they knew there was nothing there. They go back to where they were coming from.
Yeah, I had a similar story to that. It's almost like same thing with turkeys. They just have a built-in GPS. As soon as you hit that grunt call or the rattle, they know exactly where you are.
Yep.
I was able to rattle in one of the bucks, and I was going to rattle in another one, but it was chasing a doe, and I was just like, I can't get this thing off the hot. I mean, there's not really much you could do when it's a hot doe. But it's chasing around this hillside, and I'm just watching. I can't see the antlers, but I know, it's grunting its head off. I'm trying a grunt call, I'm trying a bleat call, and the antlers. And each one had it come within 40 yards, but it's too much brush, and they would go back chasing and grunting at the doe. But similar story to you, it's, there's overcalling too, and I think I overdid it in terms of that situation. So I tried all three. All three had a little success, but it wasn't enough to get it over. But with the rattling, it's either going to help you or it's going to hurt you, I feel like.
But again, there's so many guys that swear by it, and I just rattled in this monster, And so I don't know. It's one of those things. Your experience could be something 10 times in a row, but another guy's could have the opposite experience 10 times in a row, and it's just a matter of how that buck's feeling and what that particular buck's personality is,
Yeah, something that was interesting. I watched a video on someone I watch a lot is Whitetail Habitat Solutions. There's not a lot of Northeast content, which is why I think this podcast is great. A lot of it is Northwest or Midwest. It's not really super relevant for a lot of stuff because we're not really hunting fields with corn, and they have like all these great features of. Just we're hunting white oaks. That's primarily what you should be looking for in terms of food, unless it's a bad acorn year.
Yep.
But so he was talking about just calls that you should be ware of. Like number one, snort wheeze. It could either work for you or it could scare the deer.
Yep.
and he talks about like the grunt calls. It's one of his favorites because it's conservative, but it's natural too. He talks about the rattling, how it'll work in certain situations, but in terms of just knowing his herd, because we're always watching our cameras and seeing what's around. There's bachelor groups, but sometimes there could be one of those bigger, mature bucks that are kind of on his own. And there's a reason why he's mature. It's because he's not always with the bachelor group. And he might be just, he's just staying alive because he's just, skating by. He's not being aggressive. So sometimes if, maybe I'm looking at too far into it, but rattling might turn him off. He might not want to go towards danger.
Yeah.
He might just hang out, and that's why he's the top dog.
Yeah, well, like Pat Burns' buck, that's what he thinks. Pat Burns' buck is probably 11 and a half years old, could be 12 and a half. He's a giant. He's a once in a lifetime buck, and no hunters ever saw him. And he was really reclusive, and he was in this tiny little core. And Pat, he points out, he goes, look at all these sheds that he has, and look at him now. He's never had a broken tine. He doesn't have any cuts in his ears. He just doesn't think that buck was a fighter. And that buck, he didn't want to be around other bucks, He was kind of always wanted to be by himself, but that might be why he got so old. So going back to what you just said,
yeah,
right?
That answers my question.
Yeah, I mean, that particular buck was super reclusive. And I asked Pat, like, do you ever rattle? And he's like, no, he did once. He rattled once, but he was nervous to do any of that around him because he didn't think he was fighting. And now, contrary to that, my big target 9 has scars all over his ears. He's got so many holes in his ears, look like Swiss cheese. And so I figured, all right, he's a fighter. He's been fighting a lot. He seems pretty old. So that's why I figured the first time I sat in that stand this year, I went in and I busted out the rattle horns. And 15 seconds after busting the rattle horns, I see him at 30 yards. So now I think first 2 bucks came crashing down the hill when I hit the rattle horns. Before I could even put them in the bag, 2 bucks came crashing down the hill. And they were nice, but they weren't as big as this 9. And then they started fighting on the ridge in front of me. Like, I kind of sparked it. I think they must have only been 80 to 100 yards away when I started rattling, and they were already making their way that way. That's just how I feel. Like, I don't know if the rattling brought them in because they were so close that they were probably coming by anyway.
Is this in your, like, I forget what you called it, like the war zone area?
No, this is a different spot. No, there's a battle. Yeah, the battleground, the fighting grounds. That's a different spot, but I've got a lot of fights going on there. No, this is the new spot that I scouted all summer, and it's got my big 9 in it, and my first time ever sitting it during hunting season. I pulled the horns out. And, so those bucks start fighting, and I'm watching them with, like, kind of my left eye, and I see movement out of my right, and it's my big old monster buck just strutting in, not really caring about those bucks fighting, but he's like, all right, I heard something down here, and he's making his way. He circles around in a way that he didn't come right to my open spot because he was only 30 yards. There's one spot he could have stepped into at that 30 on the ridge that I could have arrowed him, but he went down over the hummock and kind of like, he knew that there was something over there, and he goes, well, you knew that I was there somehow because where I hit the horns. So instead of going into that opening on the hill, he avoided that, went down over the ridge and circled around this way and came in this way, and there was some big pine trees and stuff. The way he came in like this. And
was he trying to get the wind in his favor?
Kind of, yeah. He was licking his nose up in the air, and I think my wind was blowing that way a little bit, and he stayed behind the big pine tree for 20 or 25 minutes without moving there. To the point where I kind of forgot he was there, and I was like, man, did he disappear? And then I saw his tine sticking out, 20 minutes into me just standing there looking for movement. And but he was a fighter. I know he's a fighter. I know he's been fighting because all the scars in his ears. But I just don't know if he wants to fight much anymore. I mean, he didn't come in all like Bert. He just he came in like a veteran. He's seen it all, and he stayed 30 yards away. He didn't see any bucks fighting. He knew that his 2 running mates were up there fighting. But he knew they didn't make that noise, and he just knew something was up, and he slowly walked away. So now I don't want to hit the horns again on him because I just think he knows the gig is up. He's like, something wasn't right. There was rattling right there. There should have been 2 bucks. There wasn't. This is something that isn't natural to my habitat, right? So he knew something was up, and now I don't know if I messed it up I don't know if I'm ever going to see him again this year, but I definitely don't want to rattle in that stand again because I think he's educated to it.
Well, you rattling caused the other two to end up fighting, right?
I think so.
So that kind of worked out in your favor.
With younger bucks, yeah. I think rattling is, but again, it could be a different story for different people. But younger bucks come in. I've had a lot of younger bucks come in rattling over the years.
Yeah.
Here, just in the last few years, I see mostly younger bucks come in. It's only been twice that it was a mature buck that came into it. So I don't know. And then the snort wheeze has worked for me too, but only on younger bucks as well. And it's worked only when a deer is walking away from me and I wanted to try it, and I was just kind of experimenting. Yeah. And I like experimenting on young bucks that I know I'm not going to shoot. Mm-hmm. And I did that yesterday, and I'll finish that story too. When I was up, couldn't even get my bow off the ground, and that buck was behind me. I experimented on him a little bit too. It's fun to do that. But yeah, I've drawn bucks that were 50, 60 yards away with a snort wheeze to come back in up to 20, 15 yards. The younger bucks just they love that. They get in super close to investigate it, but I don't know about a big buck.
I've thought about doing that too, but it's a big risk. For a little buck that you don't really care about, definitely just kind of learning it.
What do you risk? What's the risk? The risk is if there's other bucks around and
Yeah, but at this point of the year, probably not. They're not really grouped up at all.
Yeah.
So you're not really risking anything. So that's a good point.
So I was grunting at this one last night, and that got him to come in. I got really great footage of it, but he comes right through the community scrape, and I'm only sitting 15 yards off of it. And this is where I think I didn't even have time to put a face mask on. I am very your white face sitting up against a tree stands out like crazy.
Yeah.
And so if there's ever a buck and you've got your face mask down, put it up. Just have your eyes barely slivered. I mean, I'm a big proponent of that. And then this whole year I've been wearing camo gloves, but this time I was wearing my cutoff blue gloves. And I was filming like this with my phone and those blue gloves and my white face, and he came in and just looked right at me and knew something. He picked me out. I was in my first light stuff, and the rest of the way I was super camoed up. But I think my combination of my white face and those blue gloves and the white tips of my fingers, stood out to him. I mean, he picked me off and he blew at me, and it was pretty fun. There'll be some footage in one of my next videos coming out. But
yeah, be careful of the blue.
I know it.
Yeah, I've thought about coming into the season. I was like, I would love to self hunt or self film.
Yeah.
But it makes it a lot more difficult.
Yeah,
and as a beginner, that's not really what I was looking for.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about all the Tacticam stuff you could do with your bow. But you got to practice. And same thing with the face mask. I ended up shooting with the face mask still up. That could change your anchor point too. Mm-hmm. So it's something to be aware of. Yeah. So right before I shoot, I always slide it down slowly, and then I end up.
Where's your anchor point? In the crease of your mouth?
I put it pretty much in the crease of my mouth.
Do you have a kisser button on it?
I don't. I have a hand release one. I don't use I always get nervous thinking about using the back tension releases or the hinges.
Yeah.
I know
I haven't messed with those.
They say it makes your shot more accurate. I tried it, and I'll probably give it a shot again, but I think it's just one of those things. It's a preference thing. I shoot fine with the hand release. So, or the wrist strap.
Do you have what kind of is it a thumb release? Or is it
It's a single finger trigger. Yeah. Sometimes they have 2 or 3, I think.
True Ball?
I forget what brand it is. I don't know if I'm making this up. It might be Nemesis or something like that.
Yeah.
It was just something I got from Reedy's.
I've still never been to Reedy's. I heard so many good things about them. I want to do a podcast with Chris Reedy too. I still got to go there. I heard it's an amazing place. I go to Jerry's Bait and Tackle. I like Jerry's a lot too. Yeah,
I used to go there when I would go fish Pratt Pond down the street from here.
Oh yeah.
I get my bait from him. But in my opinion, I think Reedy's is the best in terms of archery. I've been to a few other places, and just the customer service alone just did it for me. When I was a new archer, this is back in January before I even started scouting, I was kind of intimidated in archery. It takes a lot of skill and precision.
Yeah.
And I went there and I had no idea. I didn't even really do any research, which going into it probably isn't a good idea when you're trying to buy an expensive bow. But he knew that, and he ended up being like, hey, I have this used bow, I can sell it to you for cheap, as a beginner, and it's a Matthews VXR. And, from there, I just, I trusted him, and his staff is incredible. Like Seth, TK, they all help you, and just your shot.
You go to a nice bow shop, there's nothing like it. It's like concierge service. They'll fit you with everything right. They'll give you their best suggestions. They'll work within your budget, and you just feel like you're walking out of there and you're super confident. You're like, all right, those guys know everything there is to know about bows, and they just fitted me up like you're getting a suit. And, you really feel super confident leaving like that. I mean, and most bow shops are like that.
Yeah. But, you're leaving pretty much any bow shop. You're hitting like 20 yards on a dime.
Yeah.
By the time you leave, and it could be your first time shooting. It's incredible how dialed in they can get that bow in for you. But yeah, I think they're incredible.
I'm still using the same bow, same setup with everything that I bought, and I think it was 2014 now is when I bought that bow. And I used it in Vermont one weekend a year, I think, for 3 years. I think I just went up to Vermont and out of my deer camp and never saw a deer. It was just one weekend a year, very casually bow hunting, and then started getting into it down here. And same setup. It's a nice bow. And, the guy set me up right the first time. He got me a super light bow and something that I could use he said, use it for 10 years. And a lot of guys like to get a new bow every year, but I'm still using this one. It's works fine for me, although I'm probably going to get another bow because it's nice to have a backup. It's another thing a lot of people talk about. Have a backup bow, have a backup release, all that stuff, because in the pinch, if something happens in the season, your bow drops out of your stand somehow, or you drop it, or you bang it up and it explodes, like happened to Dan Jaros last year. Your bow just exploded when he drew it back. Something crazy happened. And you want to hunt, you want to get right back in and hunt, you got to have a backup. So.
Yeah. The thing with archery is everything is so consistent. Like your shot has to be consistent. I think I was in a pinch recently, and, I went to just a local archery shop, and I just need arrows. All my arrows were snapped. So I was like, I need more arrows. So
I'm missing all those bucks, man.
Yeah, I'm missing them, yeah. So I ended up just getting arrows, and I didn't have my release with me. I'm like, crap. So I borrowed one of theirs, and just switching the release, I wasn't shooting the same as I was with my other one.
You liked it better, or you didn't?
I didn't.
Yeah.
My shot, like it just something wasn't right. Like I'm so used to with my release hitting the certain anchor point, and it just felt different.
Yeah.
And the slightest difference can just change your shot. So just being aware of that, even just like a bow or your arrows, like throughout the summer, I was like, I should probably buy cheaper arrows if I'm doing these 3D shoots, but you kind of want to practice what you're shooting during hunting season as you are 3D shoots, because as soon as you switch, you have to change your sight, because your GPI, which is like the weight of the arrow per inch, grain per inch, that'll change just the trajectory. So it's something to be aware of. Any little adjustment changes everything.
Did you do 3D shoots like just at Rod and Gun Club, or did you go to any of those big events that
I went to a couple of them. It was tough to do during the summer. I had some stuff going on. They have them like on Sunday mornings, which as a young kid isn't very ideal. So I only made a few of them.
Waking up hungover.
Yeah, it was always tough, and I was always coming from Boston. So they do. If you're a new hunter, that is a great way to gain confidence. You go out there, you're going to be paired up with people who do it every single week, and they'll help you with little things too. You don't want to make adjustments on the fly.
Yeah.
And, you're going to lose some arrows too if you miss, because some of the targets are small at like 35 yards, 40 yards, and you don't use a rangefinder. So it could get costly, but you learn.
Yeah. You didn't go to Total Archery Challenge or anything like that, right?
No. I was going to like Rod and Gun Clubs all around Massachusetts.
Yeah. I'm thinking about maybe doing next year some kind of outdoor expo and event. So people gotta stay on me about it. If you think it would be something you'd want to come out and do, and get Lanny Benoit, get Hal Blood, Big Woods Bucks guys, get a bunch of different local podcasts to show up, do a podcast festival, maybe do some live shows. and set up a 3D course and just have this whole outdoor weekend experience. So I'm toying with doing that because my day job was working events and putting on events. So I kind of know what I'm doing there. I think it could be pretty fun. Get a bunch of bow hunters together, some gun hunters, and all around New England to come up for a weekend. But I'm toying with that idea. So
I think you should.
yeah, I think it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, the general consensus, like someone like myself, where it's like just meeting those guys and getting to learn from them. I mean, every single day, I feel like I'm just getting better by talking to people or going out in the woods. Because I mean, I'm so addicted. I go out twice a day.
Yeah,
it's all I can think about. So just you keep learning. Keep talking to people. It's great.
Yeah, the idea would be like the idea that I've had in my head is like to get the best hunters there are in the Northeast all together in one weekend. So you have like the best group of hunters ever assembled, right? That's like in my head the grand thing is the best group of hunters ever assembled, all having fun outside, talking to new guys, talking to beginners. There's shows like there's sportsman shows that have been going on for decades around here. The one in Vermont, the Yankee Sportsman's Classic. They're all kind of the same. You go inside. It's it's inside in a convention center, and you go to seminars. I saw a Hal Blood seminar there when I went 3 or 4 years ago, and it's nothing against Hal. Hal is a great speaker, but just like sitting in a room all stuffy with some chairs and stuff, it's just kind of like this weird feeling. But I feel like you could do it better outside. Get a panel of like some of the best hunters. Kind of have it be more of like just a feel of like, you're outside, you got a group of guys together. It's kind of like, you're at school, but on a field day, right? I just feel like the vibe would be better out there and kind of turn it into like a live podcast where I could just moderate some stuff, ask a bunch of questions. The audience can chime in and ask questions. And I don't know. I'm toying with it, and I just think it'd be pretty fun. And Pat Burns already was talking. He's like, yeah, I could unveil the electric buck there after I get it taxidermied. And, we could do a lot of cool stuff. Get all the guys who shot really big mass bucks this year to, bring their bucks, their taxidermied bucks out and kind of showcase like
a car show.
Yeah, a little bit. So, Northeast Big Buck Club, I went to their banquet this year. It was awesome. And so it'd kind of be stealing a little bit of what they do because they bring all the biggest bucks from the Northeast to be on display there at that banquet. And it's really cool to see it that way. But I feel like that's another different thing. It's an upscale banquet. I just feel like being outside can really add a fun element to it. Get some music playing, and a couple of 3D shoots, and get a bunch of sponsors there, and then a lot of these hunters that just kind of hosting open seminars and school sessions. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It's definitely good for everyone, and there's not really much going on in the Northeast. I feel like in terms of just like getting hunters together. As like a new hunter, I was brought in because I knew how much my grandfather loved hunting.
Yeah.
Outside of him, I didn't really have any connections to hunting.
So your dad never hunted?
No. My the only one in my family that is a hunter or outdoorsman is my grandfather. I always fished my whole life. That's pretty much all I did.
Yeah.
And then between a coworker and my grandfather was like kind of nudging me to try it. That was the only thing driving me.
How old are you?
23.
23? Yeah. You've got a long hunting career ahead of you too, man. It's awesome that you got into it now. Because your 20s, you can kill a lot of big bucks. Your 30s, 40s, 50s, you can too. But your 20s, you still are like your peak athleticism for what you want to, what you're going to be able to do. My back is aching. I'm 34, but my back's been killing me because I hunted kind of hard this year. There's like little shit like that to start breaking down for you when you get in your 30s. But you can sit long days. You can hike long. You can hike up to the big woods, do some big woods on hunting, and I can do all that shit too. But I'm just saying, you've got a lot of prime years right now.
Yeah, I could definitely feel you on the back pain. I have a climber on my back, and it's like I'm trying to compensate for the weight, and I have like my backpack in the front with the bow on it. It's really awkward.
That's definitely what it is that climber, because I've carried my climber around everywhere, and I've got a heavy backpack and shit too.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out the ideal set. Like when I walk in the woods, I sound like an elephant. I'm not very quiet. I've tried to be quiet, and then I get to a point where I'm bushwhacking, I'm making all sorts of noise, my climber's clanging. I'm just like, all right, there's a fine line between, tiptoeing, but you're trying to tiptoe and you're making so much noise. And it's like, okay, at this point,
Just go.
just get there, sit down, and just stop.
Yeah.
Like, shut up.
Yeah, I've been there too. But when I wasn't as good of a hunter as I am now, I was doing that a lot more. And it is definitely the quieter you can get in there, the better for your success, for sure.
Yeah.
But I've been there so many times where I'm, like you said, you're trying to tiptoe, you're trying to be quiet, but everything's going the wrong way. You're smashing into stuff, you're breaking branches, and then you start sweating always when that happens. Right when that happens,
You get frustrated.
it's not even because you're like working hard. It's just like your sweat is like a reaction from your body from being stressed from.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I just blew it. I just blew this entire hunt. And you just got to stay positive.
Yeah.
So I guess the big buck story goes along with that.
Yeah, let's do that.
So like after I figured out to pick up where I left off, was like I came down, checked the camera. He was like in the area, but he was kind of gone, and it was affiliated to the rut. He was chasing does somewhere. I ended up
Check the camera on the way into your stand, right?
when I was leaving.
Oh, when you're leaving.
I always check it, like if I hunt in the morning and I'm leaving around, this is like a Saturday, I'll leave around like 11. I was checking the camera.
Yeah.
I went across the tracks, and based on the wind, I wanted to approach it a certain way so I could walk into the wind instead of with the wind so that they wouldn't scent me. And that's a lot of what I do is like I go on, my mapping system, and I'm like, all right, wind's going this way. I'm always going to walk like in the wind wherever I approach from, and that's how I pick my stand locations.
Yeah, that's so important.
So important.
Yeah.
And I think I may have got winded once this year. And actually the other day I walked in, I was lazy because I was running late, and I just said, enough's enough. It's already getting light. I got to cut through here, and I cut through there, and that's where the deer were, of course. But like we were talking about, the fine line of, if you're tiptoeing, you're still making a lot of noise, you might as well just get there.
Yeah.
This was the afternoon too, so it's a little more livelier. It's not like dead quiet. So I knew I was going to have to go through brush anyway, and to get, like, it's a really, really thick spot, and there was scrape lines all through it. So I just kind of barreled my way through there, and this was during daylight savings, so it got dark at, I think, like 5:30.
Yeah, 5:30. Yeah.
So I got in
Beginning
there.
of it.
I got in there at like 4:30. I had like an hour. I'm like, why am I even here? This is my first sit here, like all year. I know it's gonna be good. It's like I'm already wasting it because I only have an hour of hunting. And then, not by the time I got up there, it was 4:30. So I was sweating. The wind really wasn't in my favor, but I just wanted to go there just because I hadn't sat there. And then that's when I saw the doe, and the buck was about 20 yards away from it, just on the hill. I'm on a hill. There's a brook between us. And, your heart starts pumping. You're looking at it. And all it cared about was just this doe. Didn't take its eyes off of it.
What was the date?
I could look. It
But
was like November
first
like
week?
6th.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was end of the first week. I feel like that's when everyone kind of takes their big bucks. So the doe's kind of doing its thing, and it's just staring at the doe. It's not even chasing it. It's not doing nothing. So then the doe hits the top of the hill. It's doing step by step with it, but just staring at it. And it got to a certain point where it started putting its nose up in the air and sniffing. And I'm like, oh no. I know, like, I hope it's not going to run away. I'm not getting winded. But I think it was so honed in on the doe.
Yep.
And then it got to the top of the hill, and I wanted to get out of sight before I did anything, like a grunt. And I didn't have a bleat call at the time. I could have went with that approach, but it got to the top of the hill where it couldn't see me. I gave it like one grunt, and then it stopped. It didn't keep chasing the doe. It just stopped at the top of the hill. It couldn't see me, and I could just see its legs. And I gave it like two more. Came down to where the doe originally was, where it was in sight. And I just was quiet for a while, and it was trying to figure out where I was.
Yeah.
Or it was looking around to see what was there. It definitely knew where the call was, like a GPS.
Yeah.
And every time it would look away, not every time, but occasionally it would look away, I would give one quick grunt, and then it would snap its head back to me.
Yeah.
And this was like kind of an ongoing battle, but I ended up shutting up. I didn't want to overcall. I didn't want to overdo it. But it got to a point where it was looking back at the doe, like, where are you? Keeping tabs on it. And then it ended up beelining it. A slow pace, not like it just came straight at my tree, across the brook, and it was coming up the hill, and it was staring at me. And, try to stay positive, try not to look at it. My bow's in my hand, and it's just staring at me, and I'm just trying to get as close to the tree as I possibly can, because they can only see 2D, and I'm just trying to blend in with the tree. And that's kind of where the confidence thing comes in too.
Were you up in a stand?
Yeah, I'm always in my climber. Yeah. I'm probably about this time I was probably only about 15 feet up. It's an awkward one where,
your lanes.
My climber was actually kind of pointed down, so it wasn't an ideal situation. So that's why I didn't keep going up. Maybe I needed a little tighter.
Nothing was going right on this one anyway, right? You were there late and you're bushwhacking through.
Yeah. So, it was staring at me for a good amount of time, and it feels like forever when you're there, but it was probably only
7 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So then it came straight on, and it kind of and then it turned a little bit where it was giving me a broadside shot. I'm like, no way is this actually happening. And it got past one tree, and it was about to get past another one where I had, a perfect broadside shot at 7 yards, and I do the classic meh, and it stops, and I got a shot off. And because it was a really steep shot, because I'm on a hill and it's at the base.
Yeah.
I ended up spining it. I ended up spining it because I was using the 20 pin, and it was just the angle. It must have just not been where I wanted it, and it dropped immediately. Didn't move, but it was struggling, and it gave me it knew where I was now because I could see it from 7 yards away. And in a previous podcast, you said there's a noise that it can make, and it sounds like a lion.
Yeah.
It made that roar, and it was probably the craziest thing I've ever heard. I immediately knocked another one and put another one into it where it hit the heart because I didn't want it to suffer. But I've never heard a noise like that ever.
It's not pleasant to hear.
No, it was actually pretty scary because I was I can't even YouTube it and find a video to show somebody.
Yeah.
It literally sounded like Southwick Zoo lion.
Yeah.
But yeah, it dropped right on the spot, and it was a clean.
Well, I'm happy you were able to put him out of his misery.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that second shot.
Yeah.
That's great. Wow, what a nice first big buck story though. It just goes to show you, on those days where everything feels like it's going wrong, and there's a lot of stories like that. I've talked to a lot of people who, no matter what, dude, you're really only one hot doe away from a nice buck, with like Chris Alberini said on the last podcast. And it's true. And you could be sweating, you could be stinky from work, you might, all of that stuff, all the prep can kind of get proven wrong, with one nice lucky night. But you still got to do all the prep and stuff. But yeah, don't get discouraged, even if you're having the worst entrance to your stand of all time.
Right.
Right?
Yep. It's kind of like I almost didn't go, and I actually got encouraged by my uncle. He was like, "Oh, just go. You still got some time if you go, local." And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I almost didn't go, then I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So it's kind of like just have, be positive, have the confidence to go, and just, things could happen.
Yeah, and especially the first couple weeks of November. If you even if you have an hour, go. Tomorrow I got to drop my kid off at daycare at 7, and I was thinking, should I go? Because I only have from 7 to 9, and I would really I'd have to go somewhere close and would have maybe an hour to sit. And I was thinking of not doing it, but then I was like, nah, it's November, man. A nice buck could come by any second.
Yeah, there was a day that I didn't go, and I was pretty upset at myself.
Yeah? Did you have a cell cam and shot a picture of a nice buck or something?
No, it was just the fact that I knew it was the first week of November, and it's what am I doing?
Yeah, man, you're all the way into hunting now.
Oh yeah,
you're already upset that you're missing a day.
Yep,
that's great. So what advice do you give to somebody who was you last year, brand new hunter?
Scouting is definitely pivotal. I understand some people don't have the time to scout, and that's the biggest downfall to a lot of hunters is I had the time, and that alone just helped me so much.
Yeah.
It depends on what you want to do too. Like I wanted to go into archery, so you have to be within 20 yards, 25 yards. You don't really want to take shots farther than that.
Yep.
A lot of times, all my shots were within 10 yards. And you don't think that going into the season. You're like, oh,
what are the odds they're going to be 10 yards away?
Right. And it happens a lot more than you think. I thought you would have to have a gun to kill a deer, but as long as you trick its nose, you're fine. So it's the scouting. You don't have to be rich to hunt. I mean, it's expensive, but you don't have to buy the latest and greatest gadgets. And that was something I almost wanted to do, was to, have the cool Sitka gear and all this. But it's like you can get it done no matter what. And just talk to as many people as you can, because there's a lot of people, like a lot of hunters that will help you out. Like if someone that I knew was local and is a new hunter, like I would have no problem scouting an area out with them and just, pointing out some things. It's like, we don't want to take your spot or anything like that. Like if you just need a hand and just, I mean, I didn't know what a scrape was.
Yeah.
I thought rubs were not, in fact, rubs. So it's like sometimes you need someone to point out to you to know what it is.
And you're not the first new hunter that's reached out to me that said, like, I'm having trouble finding scrapes, and I'm second guessing myself on what's a scrape and what's not. And really, it's just like now you notice it instantly, right? Because it is, don't overthink it. It's like you will know it when you see it. It's a big bare spot with fresh earth dug up under a licking branch that's going to be, 4 to 6 feet high. And that's what it is. You just can't mistake it. There's going to be leaves all around and a big bare patch of dirt in the middle of it. And you'll see footprints, and you'll see the two parallel lines from where its hooves dug in. And that's it. And don't try to second guess yourself. If you see that, that's a scrape.
Yeah. I mean, you just need someone to show you, because when you're trying to figure it out on your own, those things don't jump out to you.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing for me, too, for the longest time, was figuring out which way is the buck going, or just the doe. I couldn't
see where
figure
the
out.
dirt's kicked up.
Yeah, exactly. Or just even where you see the spread is, it's where...
Yeah, if there's a footprint in there,
Yeah, it's hard to explain. And, those are things that, I'm tracking. I'm going the wrong way because I'm thinking that's the direction that the deer's going. I didn't think that the foot would go where it's like the two hooves separate the most. It's hard to explain over this, but it's always good to have someone that can guide you in the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of what I was doing initially was just listening to your podcast, watching videos, and then going out to see it myself. It took a little bit to understand those things, but once those pieces align, it was just like from there, it just kept going place to place to place, figuring it out.
Yeah. And I think I am a firm believer that you can become a really good hunter if you just put in some time, and you've already put in a ton of time scouting. But once you get to the point where you scout enough hours, and some of the sign just starts becoming second nature to you, and you're like, oh yeah, there's a rub there, and oh, there's a scrape there, and oh yeah, I know this. I know that they've bedded over there before. I've jumped them out of their beds there, and once you start to really, all that aligns together, and you put the puzzles together a little bit. Because I was like you a few years ago, where I would be overthinking everything, and just going, just overthinking it to the max, and it was driving me nuts. And I wasn't able to see or think clearly when I was overthinking. So I couldn't put the pieces of the puzzle together and all the sign. But now I can go into a spot and just read it. And you see a sign, you know exactly what's going on. And you know where to set up your cameras. You know what tree you should be setting up. Your stand-in, the entrance and exit and how you're going to get in and out based on different winds. And all that just starts to align after a certain amount of hours that you spend studying and exploring and scouting, really.
Yeah, preparation's huge in hunting. And even like you might have a spot picked out and you're confident you're going to go there, but then you get there in the morning and you're like, oh, I don't know how to get there, or the tree that you picked out. That could be so difficult, just figuring out what tree to sit in.
That happened with me this year on that buck, that 8-pointer. I had a plan. I was going to sit to that community scrape that I checked last night. I was on my way there, but I had a really tough entrance. I hadn't been in there that year. There was a lot of rain, and the way I walk in, was just, it was knee-high mud and muck, and I was going through that, and I could barely move, dragging my climber. Had all my filming gear. I was all gung-ho going to use my new camera, which I haven't even used once this year. I'm just using my iPhone. All of that stuff going through this thick, knee-high mud. None of the stuff was mowed down where it normally is, like on pipelines and stuff that I use to get in. Like, none of it was mowed. It was all overgrown, and it was terrible. So daylight was coming, and I was still 500, 600 yards from where I wanted to be, but I was like, I got to pick a tree, and I was so pissed at myself, and I couldn't believe it. I was not confident because I just had to pick a tree.
Yep.
At that point, you don't want to go out and see, what's over there, any acorns, any scrapes, because you don't want to get that scent out in front of what you're going to be looking at. So I just picked a random tree that looked like I was going to have some shooting lanes. And I got up in it, and I wasn't confident. I was texting my buddy Chris. I'm like, man, didn't get to where I wanted to. I'm in this shitty tree. I'm looking around. I'm like, I don't even see any acorns anywhere. I don't see any oaks. There's going to be no reason for deer to be here. And he was like, oh, you'll probably see a big buck. And so, 30 minutes later, I did. So, again, it's like goes to show you, like, even when you're having a bad entrance, like, and I was sweating, and it was that classic thing, like, man, I messed my whole hunt up.
Yeah.
Good things can happen if you're just in the tree.
Exactly. Yep.
Just be there.
You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Have you thought about getting a saddle?
Yeah, I have a saddle.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
You haven't used it yet? Or
Wild Edge. I got it from Wild Edge and their stepladder system, and I went to they had a saddle meetup earlier this year in Connecticut, and I went down to that, and a bunch of great guys, and I had a rough summer where I didn't get a ton of scouting in like I did last year. I mean, I set all my cameras up and stuff, but I didn't scout a bunch of new areas.
Yep.
I didn't have much time. But I was planning on practicing that saddle a lot so I could get used to it and use it this year. But I only ended up practicing it once or twice, and I used it to help hang a hang-on stand and stuff. But I just didn't get it down to enough where I was confident using it going into the season. I didn't get used to the steps and just all of it. I mean, I didn't practice enough, so I don't want to add it and use it this year until I practice. Maybe if I tag out on my bucks, I'll take it out on some doe patrols and stuff.
Yeah.
To practice. But yeah, I have the Wild Edge saddle, their step ladder. I have their perch platform, and then I also have a tethered platform that I won fantasy football league last year, but I couldn't. I was so busy with stuff. I enlisted one of my friends to be the general manager of the team for me, and we ended up winning. And he actually took everything over. He even paid the entries fees that I paid for it. So he kind of like owned the team, but we still collaborated a little bit. And yeah, he felt bad because he inherited a great team, a great roster. And he bought me a tethered platform, and I just got that one day.
That's awesome. Just
in the mail. And I was like, yeah, it's really, really cool gift. So I'll get into it next year if I don't, take it out this year. But
yeah, that's definitely something that I want to add to my repertoire. It just looks so effective.
Yeah.
And the versatility of it to be able to shoot. I mean, the climber, it gets it done. I didn't really when I went into the season, it's like one of those things where it's a craze where you see everyone else getting into it and just you get up quickly, you're quiet, you could go 360 around this tree, you could hide.
Yeah.
But the climber, I'm just like banging like crazy, and you're sweating, you're getting frustrated because I can't set up.
It's definitely more stealthy, and if you're having a longer walk, I can see where the saddle's going to be a really great tool. A lot of my walks aren't super long with the climber. I have certain spots with the climber, then I have other preset places that I can go hunt that are longer.
Yeah.
Do the haul in once and haul out once. It's better than carrying that climber in for those deep spots. But yeah, I think the saddle would be great for that.
Yeah.
My buddy Scotland's using it. It's his first year bow hunting, and he's using he's one sticking with a 3-step aider, so he only has one stick.
Yeah, it's a popular technique.
Yeah, I feel like you'd get into that. You seem pretty athletic, young guy. You could probably get into the one sticking and have no problem doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely a big investment initially, and that's why
the sticks are a big part of the investment too. Those can be pretty expensive, but if you're one sticking, it cuts the cost down.
It does, yeah. Yeah, I was looking at tethered. I looked at all the brands, and they're all kind of similar pricing. So
yeah,
I think after
give Wild
Christmas,
Edge a look. The saddle is super comfortable.
Yeah.
their climbing system, the step ladder, is much different than any other stick. Some people love it, some people don't. So you can check it out. I can show you. I don't know if
I
you've
follow
seen
them on
it.
Instagram.
So you've seen them?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can put the saddle on if you want to see what that's like after this. Yeah, and the platforms are great, and they're local guys, and it's not a huge company. They're local and growing fast and super good dudes. So if you're thinking about it, I would check them out. And if you don't like their stepladder, some people don't like it. Just you can mix and match, use their saddle, their platform, and find what sticks you want to use that fits you.
Yeah.
My buddy Scotland's using Out on a Limb, and that guy was at their saddle meetup too. So they're friends. They're all friends, and they don't mind if people want to use their saddle and Out on a Limb sticks. And the Out on a Limb sticks are awesome. They're super super lightweight.
Yeah.
They're extremely quiet. They fold in, so it's like not a fixed step that's out.
Yeah.
So you can like twist it and fold it in, so it's very small and stealthy. I mean, it was a really really cool product. I think if I was going to use those kind of steps, not the step ladder, that I would go on it with Out on a Limb too. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, there's so many options, and you can mix and match with everything.
So many. Yeah.
It could be a little overwhelming, so this winter will definitely be figured out. And like you said, they have these meetups where they'll do seminars on how to use them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I went to that one, Wild Edges meetup, and then I also went earlier in the year to one in New Hampshire that Neil Pendleton was doing, and some other New Hampshire hunters, and it was that one was a tethered meetup, but they say like, hey, this isn't all about tethered. You can bring any other brand. It's just we want to get more people into saddle hunting in general. Doesn't have to be tethered, but they sponsored it, and it was that one was pretty cool. A couple hundred people went to that one.
How do you find out about these events?
I just saw it on Facebook. I think it was posted on Boston Bow Hunter or the New Hampshire hunting page. Belong to all the New England hunting pages and stuff.
Yeah.
So you get all their feeds, and you just find out about it, and people will post it, and I'll talk about it on the podcast when I hear about some of them and stuff from time to time. But hopefully everybody comes to Hunt Suburbia meetup this summer. I mean, I want to do a bit. I've worked for Spartan Race for my day job, and Spartan Races, we do 10,000 person events. I know what goes into running one of those, and there's so many moving parts, and I feel like this would be more simple. It wouldn't be too hard to organize a big event. I want to get 1,000 people out to it.
Yeah, you could definitely do that with the following.
Yeah.
Boston Bow Hunter and Hunt Suburbia, for sure.
I think so. I don't think it would be any issue to get 1,000 people to come out and have fun shooting bows and talking to the best group of hunters ever assembled in one field. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So
you've been hunting on the ground a lot, right?
I've been hunting on the ground a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a bow, that's tough to do.
Yep. That one was a ground buck on the right there.
Wow.
And then I've had plenty of opportunities on doe this year on the ground so far, but with skippers, and I don't. This one doe I keep seeing is with two skips, but they're button buck twins, and I don't want to leave them orphaned in their first year either.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me too. I didn't want to shoot the mom doe with two fawns.
Yeah, so I mean, I do want to get. One of my goals is to kill 2 does this year, and I've got 2 tags in zone 10. Didn't get one in 9. I wanted to get one in 9, but
they're tough to get. I forget what the odds were. I ended up getting 2 of them.
You got to sign right in when there's the surplus.
Yeah,
and I forgot to select a zone when I bought my license. I forgot you can select, and then you pretty much automatically get one. I think.
Right. And I ended up that's how I got the surplus for 9 again too.
Yeah. But
so what's the biggest? I guess being on the ground. You don't spot and stock. Do you just end up sitting there?
I've been going on the ground just kind of by circumstance. Like if I had been hunting a couple days with a climber and I'm sick of carrying a climber in, and it's a place where I don't have a preset, but the wind is right, then I'm like, I'll just go on the ground, and I just find the biggest tree that there is. Some big old tree that's 5 or 6 feet wide is perfect.
Yeah.
And then I get in and clear the spot behind it so there's no leaves ruffling. You just go in there and do a huge scrape. Do a community scrape right there behind the tree so that you're quiet. And, the hunting public guys really opened up my eyes to, like, making that noise. It's a natural noise. Doe or bucks, whatever, they'll think if they just hear that, it sounds like a buck scraping. So, it's not really, a lot of times you'll do that and deer will come in right after you do that because they're around and they're curious.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sound like a human. Humans don't make that sound. It's like, a buck does that.
Yeah.
So just scrape at a huge tree and just sit there. I actually have a fold-up seat, but I haven't been carrying that in. I've just been kind of either standing behind the big tree, because I'm not doing it for long sits. When I've been on the ground this year, it's been really 2 hours max.
Yeah.
Lean my bow up against the tree. You can get a little tiny hook and screw into the tree if you want and hang your bow. Sometimes I'm sitting right down on the dirt and then standing for a lot. If you got a big enough tree, you can move around behind it, go from sitting and standing, and nothing will see you if you know where the deer are going to be coming from. You know what I mean? So just doing that, and I've had a lot of deer coming in pretty close. I'm just putting up a video in the next couple of days here that'll show some really cool ground footage of them getting in close. And I like to move, like if the tree's here, I'll just slide my phone out. Like if I know there's a deer there, like rather than put my head out where they can see, I just slide my phone out like that, and I can watch on video. I can see. It's like it's like my eyes for me on the other side of the tree. You know what's coming in.
That works
without having to pop your head out.
Yeah, so
and it's super stealthy. You just that much comes out.
Yeah.
And then listen to the John Coffey episode if you're interested in ground hunting tactics. That guy is a great ground hunter, and have you heard that one?
No, I haven't.
It's episode 5, and he uses traditional archery, long stick bow. He makes his own arrows and everything. He wants to kill him with a stone arrowhead. You can't do it in mass. There's some states that you can.
Okay.
But he's like super into being traditional and hunts on the ground. He's an older guy. I think he's like 60. And he killed a massive, like 158-inch something awesome at 7 yards from the ground a few years ago.
Wow.
And that's the background picture if you go back and watch or listen to that podcast. But he likes to find down trees, that have fallen down and has the big root ball come up. And that's his favorite thing for ground hunting. He gets behind root balls. So he'll go around the woods looking for those trees first, and then explore around it. And if there's a deer path within 15 to 20 yards, if there's a game trail going by, then he's like, all right, that's one of my spots. So he looks for down root ball trees, and then tries to see if there's enough sign around it to hunt from it and get a deer in range. So
that's interesting.
Really good cover. It's a huge natural wall for you.
For me that would be like a confidence thing. I'd be like, for whatever, obviously being lifted up, your wind's at a higher elevation. If you're hunting in the afternoons, I didn't know about thermals before listening to your podcast, so that changes a lot of things. You don't want to be at the top of a hill in the afternoon because your thermals could be pulled down.
Yep. It's the up and down wind. You got the horizontal wind, and the thermals are the vertical wind you got to worry about.
Yeah, it's something that you don't think of unless you talk to people with more experience. But just being on the ground, that's definitely a whole nother level. If you're on the ground too, and you get a buck, that is way more satisfying than getting
ground experience. Is awesome. It's so much because I had only ever hunted on the ground before I started bow hunting. I'd never been in a tree stand ever until a few years ago, and then I started bow hunting. But the experiences you have on the ground feel like 2 or 3 times more exciting, if that makes sense. A buck coming in when you're on the ground and coming in to 10, 15 yards away from you, it's like, you're on his turf then. Your eye level. It's a different feeling than being in a stand. You feel like you're observing when you're from the stand. You're observing him come in, but you're like experiencing it when you're on the ground. So I can see why that gets addicting, and that's why I do like to bring my bow out on the ground. I did kill that one on the ground. It was an awesome experience. That buck on the right. And I encourage you to do it if you're getting sick of the climber every once in a while and you just want to have that freedom, the mobility. There's no better mobility. Saddle is a great mobile platform, but there's no better mobility than just your feet and being on the ground and going wherever you want to, whenever you want to, without carrying any extra weight.
Yeah.
So give it a try. Find a root ball. I still haven't sat behind a root ball. I've just been finding big old 6-foot trees and getting behind them. You don't need a 6-foot tree either. You can do a 3-foot tree, but
Yeah, that definitely piqued my curiosity because the spot. So now I'm hunting Rhode Island. I'm hunting Black Hut, and it's big woods.
yeah. Yeah, that's the other side of Douglas, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or that might be Buck Hill. I always get them.
Yeah.
I get them mixed up all the time, but there's actually the spot I sat at today. I saw a doe, and it's all those root ball trees like you were talking about. And it was exactly right where those trees were. I was just off at a distance.
Perfect spot, yep.
It's way off the beaten path. And, you know, my uncle, who I recently found out, I haven't seen him in a while, he also hunts, and he used to hunt that place like years ago. So we kept walking, and I ended up finding a bunch of scrapes way off the path. And I was like, this is perfect. Like, no one else is going to know about this. You know, I could set up between these two scrapes. But no luck today, but I saw a doe. And it's like, you know, I was trying out the muzzleloader. You know, I've never really dealt with guns, so it's kind of, that's new to me. And I'm going to see if I like it or not. Have you practiced with it? Yeah, I've practiced with it. I bought a Thompson Center last year, and I haven't really used it much, and it got gunked up pretty quick. So, and I know you always talk about Woodman arms, and I'm like, oh, well, that would have been nice. Yeah, not the case with this. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting one, hopefully.
Yeah, muzzleloader's fun. And I mean, rifle is easier to muzzleloader, obviously. It shoots farther and just a little bit more accurate, except the Woodman. The Woodman's right up there with a rifle. But then muzzleloader, you know, every buck that I've seen this year, I could have poked with a muzzleloader. It could have killed my target 9 like that. You know, I just could have. Any of those deer, every deer that I've seen would be dead. But only 2 of the bucks came within range that would be dead with my bow if I shot them. One's dead, and the other one was a spike. You know, nothing else I could have killed with. Well, actually, no. That 6-pointer that I was just talking about yesterday that spotted me with my white face and my blue gloves. He would have been dead too, but you know, 20 other bucks I could have killed with a muzzleloader. So it does add range, and you know, it's a little bit easier than bow hunting, but it's an awesome tool and a super fun. One of my favorite seasons is muzzleloader in Vermont.
Yeah. Yeah, big woods is definitely different for me. So it was a little intimidating at first because I know you said you're used to it. I'm used to kind of more suburban areas, I guess. Like there's houses on either side of power lines or gas lines or wherever it is, you know. So it's easier to pattern the deer travel because they're edge creatures. So they're, you know, they might bed close to the houses, but they're walking parallel to whatever feature it is if it's power lines.
Yep.
But in the woods, it's kind of like they could be anywhere.
Yeah, it's a different feel.
Yeah, so it's like, what are they really, you know?
Did you like it, though?
I did. Yeah. I thought it was a cool challenge, you know, just seeing one, you know, I could obviously, you know, the struggle of deer hunting. It's like, wow, I mean, this place is huge. You never know where they could be, so yeah, I just set up over scrapes because that's the most consistent thing. Yep. At least there's a deer at one point there.
And funnels are bigger in the big woods, you know. They'll just be even like physically bigger, like, you know, they're actually physically bigger, but you set up on them in the rut, you know, because, like you said, they can be coming from anywhere.
Right. Especially during the rut, though. I mean, if you find those funnels, they're just, exactly.
Yep. Well, man, thanks a lot for coming. We're at about an hour, 40 minutes here.
Wow.
So do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap this one up?
No. Hopefully we'll get together again. I had a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I want to talk about a big woods buck that you kill on Buck Hill or wherever you're at in Rhode Island.
Yeah, Black Hut.
Yeah, Black Hut. Rhode Island's something I want to get into too. So maybe we'll, if I get a tag down there again, if I tag out on bucks, that'll be my next thing too. Is go to Rhode Island.
Extends your season a lot.
Extends the season. It's not super far from me. Closer to you, but not super far from me. I don't mind driving. You know, I used to drive an hour and a half from Quincy every time to hunt.
Yeah.
And especially for big woods. So maybe you and I will hunt some big woods together.
Yeah. We got a lot of learning to do with that.
If it aligns. But thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Hunt Suburbia, as we'll be releasing a lot more video content this year. Big bucks I've been dreaming often, every night till I'm in a coffin. Vermont woods to the burbs of Boston, I'm looking for a tree to get lost in. Crisp mornings, little dust in the snow, quality time, just me and my bow. Fall evenings, I know just where to go for some quality times for me and my bow. It's just me and my